Agree. So on that little note that you mentioned, I kind of want to go back to continuity because there's so much that they did so well that I think you're missing. And honestly, like, let me just bring it to light because I think you're gonna enjoy it. Like, it's some juicy stuff that got me so excited. Okay. So let's set up the timeline really quickly, okay? So we know that Civil War and Infinity War were about 2 years apart. We know this because one, okay, so in the events of Civil War, Ant-Man, all of them were all locked up because, right, they were on they're on the raft, right? That's the prison that they're sent to. He does 2 years of house arrest in Ant-Man 2, right? I'm talking about Scott Lang. And at the end of the events of Ant-Man 2, right, he is finishing up his sentencing, and then the post-credit scene is them disappearing because of the snap. That is the events in Infinity War. So that alone sets up the timeline that Civil War and Infinity War are 2 years apart. Now, like, I wanted to dive into this. Black Widow has a lot of callbacks that set up exactly where this movie falls between those two events. And we knew it was going to be between Civil War and Infinity War. I thought it was going to be somewhere closer to the events of Civil War, but once you look at all the details, it's actually about 6 months, maybe even less, shy of the events of Infinity War, and this is how we know. So in Civil War, there's a couple things that we see. In the main events of the film, we see that Natasha, and her hair is about like the length of like shoulder with a shoulder, about there, maybe a little bit longer.
Got the blonde going.
She got with that. No, I'm talking Infinity War. War. So she's got when we see her at the start of Black Widow, her hair length is significantly longer, actually about like nipple length, which is over like 10 inches plus. And it takes like about a year for your hair to grow about 6 inches. So that already sets it up. It's like about a year and a half. Let's just say that. Another thing.
Wait, no.
You go
right there. Because her hair wasn't that short in Civil War.
It's a bit longer than like shoulder apart, but when you look at it, there's a significant length that dictates time. So another thing I was going to say that kind of adds to that is that when you look at the events of Civil War, so I'm going to refer to not the main events. I'm referring to the main events being like the start of the movie to when Cap drops his shield and walks away. Iron Man's like laid flat on the ground, right?
Okay.
We then a little bit later see a scene where Iron Man is helping Rhodey essentially learn how to walk again post a severe spinal injury, right? In my head, I don't know why, but like I just felt like the time between those main events to that snippet of the scene, I felt like weeks, maybe months, right? But realistically, this man just went through severe spinal surgery. He was told he might be paralyzed, and he's learning to walk. You can tell it's been a significant length of time since the main core events of Civil War, right? So in that same snippet that I'm talking about, we have Ross give Iron Man a call that there's a break-in at the raft, right? And then that's when, we know that Cap is breaking them out, right? So based on the events of Black Widow and how this movie ends with Natasha obviously having like that signature cut hair, blonde, having the what's it called? The plane, the jet to go then rescue the Avengers who are still locked up at that point. You can actually time Black Widow like a little bit before that particular part of Civil War. So there's a big significant drop between the main event and that little last scene that we see in Civil War. And we know Black Widow falls right in there because you can assume right after the end of the events of Black Widow, she goes and picks up everybody, right?
I'm gonna say that's thin, Grace. That is thin. Okay.
How is it thin?
Just
Explain.
Because we don't know where she met with Cap. We don't know if he got on the raft with her or he got on the raft on his own. And because according, I guess, to the timeline, the only people, quote unquote, rescued from the raft was Falcon. That was it. Because at the
Falcon and Wanda,
Wanda was on the raft. Falcon and Wanda, because
Hawkeye and then Ant-Man got the deal.
They served their time. You know what I'm saying? So I'm saying that's thin simply for the fact that there's a gap that we can't speak on unless you do you actually have there was a comic that came out right before Infinity War, and it was almost just like a Captain America story of him living on the run with Falcon and Black Widow, and I think that was it. Did you read that comic?
I didn't read that one. No. No, I didn't read that comic.
Okay, so with that being said, it's I can't say you're wrong. I'm just gonna say that's a stretch. Okay, just because we don't know for sure how long that window was before. I mean, when Captain rescued them, and the end of I guess killing all the Winter Soldiers in whatever country they were in the ice. You know what I'm saying? So we don't know the timeline as far as where that was. But you're telling me that you're squeezing a whole movie in between those two events.
What I'm saying is that because when I'm talking about like the main events of Civil War and that little like end scene, obviously not the post credit scene, but that little end scene that we're talking about, we know that we know that there's been a significant amount of time between those main events and that part that we're seeing, and we know this because of Rhodey's injury. So it has to be 6 months to a year and 6 months, something to that degree. It can't. We can't just assume it's going to be weeks or months. It had to be significant.
But I'm going to throw a wrench right then and there. Okay, just simply for the fact that because this assumption is based off of, like, say we see Rhodey in recovery with Tony, and then immediately after it cuts to Captain America, and then this scene we see it's Captain America talking to Tony after Tony is really reading the letter from Captain America, right? So there's no telling when Captain delivered this letter, put this in the mail to send to Tony Stank. We don't know that. He could have sent it weeks or months before, and it finally made it to like Avengers Compound, because at the end of the day, it was like an old school flip phone. You know what I'm saying? And just to say that, in that window, what we saw with Black Widow, it could have happened. I'm gonna say sure it could have, but that is a short time span, and we can't really define it based on what we saw at the end of Civil War.
So I was gonna go back to just not based on like when he receives the letter, but the fact that he gets a call that there was a break-in, and we just know that there's been a significant amount of time between the main events and that, and we know that based on Rhodey's recovery, and then we can infer that the events of Black Widow did occur within that timeline because, first of all, when we see her in this main movie, her hair is significantly longer. We know a long period of time has passed. And we know the end scene, she makes the quote of like, I'm going to go break them out. Okay. So they're inferring that at this point of when Black Widow is taking place, it is prior to the to when they break them out, right? So it's inferred, but there's a lot of things pointing to this being the span of time, and it does add up pretty well, just based on length of recovery, length of hair, and then just how the film of Black Widow is filled up. And I know you're like, oh, that's a lot. There's a whole